Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Be sure to check out our sponsors, Tom Mirabali from healthplanchicago.com for all of your health insurance Affordable Care Act needs. He can be reached at 630-863-3477. And again, healthplanchicago.com. But again, I'm back, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Vincent Hendricks, who is a professor of formal philosophy at the University of Copenhagen and the director of the Center for Information and Bubble Studies. And he's the author of The Ministry of Truth, Big Tech's Influence on Facts, Feelings, and Fictions. Vincent, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you. Social platforms are controlling facts, feelings, narratives, and fictions in such a comprehensive manner that platforms are de facto arbiters of truth, and those who control attention first control the narratives, and therefore also what will be perceived as the truth. And that's why I know you came with that term, the Ministry of Truth, which we're going to talk about. But Vincent, how did you get interested in this topic?
Well, it came to me years and years ago when my son actually came home to me and told me a story about him taking over an Instagram profile from one of his friends. And then over the weekend, they met some rappers in the center of Copenhagen, and all of a sudden, this particular profile raised from 3,000 followers to 9,000 followers. And he was about, 12 at the time. And then Monday morning, one of his friends from school came to him and said, look, I'd like to buy this profile for money. And all of a sudden, it dawned on me, well, there's a different kind of economics running in parallel, or if not in parallel, then intersected what we understand by pecuniary economy. And that is how it came to pass that I became interested in bubbles, really. And in bubbles, usually when we talk about bubbles, we think of situations in finance, where assets will trade at price that far exceeds their fundamental value. But there are different kind of bubbles now, because there's a different kind of economy now running, and that's called the attention economy, where our attention is being gobbled up by information. And all of a sudden, you can talk about attention bubbles, and fake news and misinformation are good attention bubbles that tends to overheat the truth. The truth can't follow, but there's a lot of attention being allocated. And once you allocate attention, you generate engagement. And once you generate engagement, you generate traffic. And once you generate traffic, you generate data. And once you generate data, then you generate data harvest. And then you can analyze the data and sell it to the advertisers. And that's the model of business from TikTok to Facebook.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of, TikTok, Facebook, and so on, it's, I've been thinking a lot about, obviously social media, but also specifically as it relates to anti-Semitism, which is certainly a hot topic right now. I know in your book, again, The Ministry of Truth, you talk about how these social media giants are conflicted because they essentially have allowed content that has supported Holocaust denial, but then they reverse course following a wave of anti-Semitic incidents. We're talking about users of billions and billions of people. We're talking about WhatsApp, Messenger, Instagram, all of those sort of things. But, first of all, let's talk about the name of the book, Ministry of Truth. I know you were inspired by, is it George Orwell?
Sure. And because in this book, 1984, his pivotal book from 1984, George Orwell talks about a ministry of truth. And basically, the ministry of truth there is a ministry for lies and propaganda. And that's not what we are saying, Camilla Milton and I, that the ministry of truth is when it relates to social platforms. But what we are saying is that they basically sit on the infrastructure on one hand. So quantitatively, they have a big say as to what will go viral and what will not go viral. And on the second term, they also actually govern quality in terms of what will show in your feed. It's algorithmically often curated, et cetera. So de facto, they work as if they were a ministry of truth, although, of course, they might not have the intent that you find in 1984. But de facto, it pretty much amounts to extensionally the same thing.
And so I know in your book you argue that basically these giants, they cannot be depended on to police themselves when it comes to reducing misinformation and hate speech. Again, the example I just provided in terms of anti-Semitism, it shows that, again, they're letting it on, they're taking it off. Really, there's, as you say, a ministry of truth, big tech's influence on facts, feelings, and fictions. It's when it's subject to the whims of these big tech giants, it's not going to bode well for democracy. So I'm curious what you and your co-author are advocating for, and I know a lot of it is you're sort of providing that thought-provoking window on the social media platforms, but what do you believe is the right solution?
Well, and the last chapter of the book is called "Now What," right? So one thing has to do with digital literacy. Yet another thing has to do with engaging in new partnerships between, say, NGOs or even states and the social platforms. And then, of course, there's legislation in the third end, right? So that's the last part of those three legs. And one of the things that both Republicans and Democrats, although they can't come to bipartisan agreement about much these days, they do have partisan agreement that something should be done at big tech, either because they're going too big, so we should invoke antitrust laws on one end, or they should at least in some sense be responsible for what is on their platform related to what's called the Communications Decency Act, Section 230, where they basically get out of jail free pass, and maybe that should be revoked. That's in the US. And in Europe, we just passed two big legislation packages pertaining to big tech. One is called the Digital Markets Act that has to do with leveling the playing field for actors in this particular information market. And the other one has to do with where are we as citizens and users? What are our rights? And so between the Digital Markets Act and the Services Act and the fact that there's bipartisan agreement in the US, there's also some legislative packages that should be installed. So we are basically arguing threefold: digital literacy, new partnerships, and legislation.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I'm chatting with the one and only Vincent Hendricks, the author of The Ministry of Truth, Big Tech's Influence on Facts, Feelings, and Fictions. We've got to squeeze in a very quick break over here, but when we return, we'll continue our conversation again about that advocacy I know that you have in that chapter again around what's next and talking about digital literacy more broadly. Again, you're listening to Get Down to Business, the show about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Get on my website, shalomklein.com, but more with Vincent Hendricks when we return in just a moment. You're listening to Get Down to Business, and I'm back with Vincent Hendricks, professor of formal philosophy at the University of Copenhagen. Again, he's the director of the Center for Information and Bubble Studies, which has been funded by the Carlsberg Foundation. Hendricks is the author of multiple books on logic, methodology, and many other topics. But Vincent, we've been chatting a lot about social media platforms, which by their ability to shape understanding of facts and fiction are transforming society, democracy, and individuals alike. So you have, you and your co-author have advocated for digital literacy, new partnerships between public agencies and private enterprise, and laws and regulations. So as we have this conversation at the end of 2022, what's your perspective analysis of what's going to happen in 2023 on this topic?
Well, one of the things we got to have to look out for is exactly where Twitter is going to go in 2023 ever since Elon Musk took it over, because I think it's fair to say that the direction has been somewhat inconsistent. So one thing is, where is the de facto public square going to be in 2023? And on top of that, there's another issue that we should look at, which is especially pertinent also to Americans, is the use of TikTok. Because the use of TikTok, there is not an American politician with respect to themselves that do not have a TikTok account. But you should realize one thing, that all the data scraping and all the harvesting goes back to China. So the question is, that's also going to be used for profiling. So now, what is that going to do to, say, American democracy, that there's a third party there that also wants to have a chip into this? And on top of that, then we're going to have to look into legislation. So I think, where is the public square going to go? What is it going to be used as a TikTok in the U.S. and around the world? And three, where are we going to go with legislation and regulation?
Wow. Okay. So Vincent, I've learned a lot in this conversation. You've demystified a lot of different topics over here. There's one takeaway that you want our listeners to walk away with, something that they can do, something that they should know or advocate for. What would it be? What's the action, as you say, the what's next that you want everybody to walk away from this conversation?
I think one should realize the following, that the way that the social platforms are set up and making their money is basically by allocating a resource, a cognitive resource of ours that's called attention, and then transferring that into a capital asset that in the end could make us the collateral damage. So what I'm trying to say first and foremost is this, namely, that whenever you get bored, make sure that you don't check your social platforms, because basically you're just feeding the beast by taking the most valuable cognitive resource of yours and turning it into a capital asset for a third party. So spend your attention, pay your attention with care.
Wow. Okay. Well, Vincent, again, really, really helpful conversation. We've been chatting about big tech's influence on, again, facts, feelings, and fictions. And the book is called The Ministry of Truth, inspired by George Orwell's dystopian novel in 1984, whose emergence and development have consequence not only for truth, but also for the past, present, and future. Vincent, again, great conversation.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm sure everybody can find the book Ministry of Truth on your favorite website, Amazon, and so on. We'll link through the show notes as well. But again, great conversation over here today. We've chatted with Jenny Lopez, Matt Ostanek, Bill Price, and of course, Vincent Hendricks. All will be linked and can be contacted through my website, shalomklein.com. But be sure you subscribe, rate, review, and share. It's the best way so you can never miss a show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. And as we move into the holidays, definitely be sure to take care of each other. Look out for somebody that may not have their family with them, especially when we're talking about in the workplace. It can get a little bit lonely out there. So let's make sure we're taking care of each other and setting ourselves up for success in the new year of 2023. Get in touch with me if you have any feedback on any of our conversations. But we'll be back next Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on AM 560. The Answer. Again, be sure to check out our sponsors, Tom Arabali, healthplanchicago.com. Again, to success. Let's get down to business. We'll talk to you next Sunday. Can't wait for the conversations.